I genuinely believe that education as a whole has room for improvement, including Williamson County schools. You know, we can always do a better job. To me, the effort should be on improving what's a good framework rather than throwing it out and starting over. And as a father and as a citizen in Williamson County, as a taxpayer and as a superintendent of schools, I believe that if charter schools come to Williamson County and if vouchers come to Williamson County, that it will negatively impact the students that remain in the public schools, and your home values and my home values will decline. You know, at the end of the day, once again, we just believe in local control. Let the citizenry, through their elected local officials, make the decision of what's best. And in Williamson County, your home values are directly correlated to the value of public schools. So it certainly, from a physical standpoint, would have a negative impact on Williamson County schools financially. We would obviously reduce the quality of services that we have all grown accustomed to. It's why people moved to Williamson County, specifically because of schools. It's why I took the job to be your superintendent, because of the quality of schools. And that is fragile, and it will become more fragile if these bills become law. Our school board's position is this: whether you agree or disagree with the benefit of charters and vouchers, everybody's going to have an opinion on that, and obviously it's a very varied opinion. But our school board's position is these are local issues. Let locally elected officials make those decisions. That's Williamson County School Board's position. Leave local issues local. From my perspective, I actually believe that the voucher, if it becomes law, the voucher bill, if it becomes law, would be unconstitutional and will be challenged right away. If you look at what happened both in the state of Louisiana and Florida, both of those were declared unconstitutional. And from what I read of the proposed legislation, Tennessee would follow a similar format. And a lot of what we're talking about relates to one of two areas. First, what's best for kids? And second, what physical impact does it have on the community at large? And so I'm going to talk about both of those. Let me start with the physical impact. Williamson County Schools, according to the most recent state report card, spends just over $8,400 per student. The state of Tennessee spends on average $9,123 per student. So while this is widely recognized as an affluent community, the reality of it is that in totality, Williamson County spends very little taxpayer dollars on public education. In fact, we're in the bottom third of the state of Tennessee in per pupil expenditures. Now, if you also contextualize that to the national average per pupil, the state of Tennessee is ranked 48th or 49th in the nation in per pupil expenditures, depending on what poll you look at or what research you look at. So we're in the bottom third of the bottom fifth percentile nationally. So I say that because it's really important as we look about the economic impact of policy change at the state level. If we're already struggling to make ends meet financially in Williamson County, and you see it played out every year as we begin the budgeting process, and we're about to begin that again, we have this public wrestling match about how much we spend per pupil. We're growing too fast. We're spending too much money. And so every dollar counts in Williamson County, and that's not to say it doesn't count elsewhere, but I think it really, really counts here in Williamson County. And at the end of the day, both the voucher school bill and the charter school bill, as they are currently amended, would take taxpayers' dollars away from Williamson County Public Schools and divert them to other entities. And the argument that I've been making on the Hill and with our local delegation, and the school board is consistent in their conversations as well, is that our fixed costs don't go away. The house note, the electric bill, the number of buses that we run, the number of teachers that we employ are not going to change because 100 kids or so go to a charter school or elect to use a voucher in a private school. What will change is the amount of money that we receive for the remaining students. So costs are going up, and the number of students we serve is going down, and we have this financial deficit. Interestingly enough, it's a two-edged sword, because as we lose students to private schools or charter schools, the cost per pupil actually goes up. And so what ends up happening, we actually end up sending more money per pupil to both the charter provider and the voucher, because our cost per pupil goes up. So it gets worse. As more kids go, the formula actually works worse against a traditional public school, and we end up losing more money. So it's kind of a black hole, so to speak. And then the second big bucket, or the second area that we focus on, is what's really best for kids. And as my neighbor here very eloquently stated, there is no reputable research that indicates that vouchers and or charter schools are good for kids. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. The research indicates, there was a Credo study from Stanford University that indicates only 17% of charter schools outperform the traditional schools that the kids came from. 17%. That's a mighty big gamble for students' future to do that, in my opinion. 37% do worse, and the rest of them are, no discernible difference. So the research tells us that it's not a good option for boys and girls. There are always outliers. There are always schools that will do better than what the research says, but by and large, the research tells us that these are not effective strategies. And I hate to use an inflammatory phrase, but I'll use it. I actually blogged about it today. I call that junk science. It's not good science. The studies that people are relying on are studies that do not come from credible institutions, and or they were paid for by people that are on the opposite side of the fence on that issue. I'd like to close by saying this. We are committed in Williamson County to be innovative, to implement research-based reforms for the benefit of boys and girls. And I'm the first one to stand in line. I'm all in if someone can show me research that says it works and it's better for kids. The reality of it is that research doesn't exist from a credible source, and it's bad for kids. Our school board, therefore, has formally voted in opposition to the voucher bill as it relates to how it would impact Williamson County schools, and also the charter bill. But the reality of it is, it appears that school districts across the country are playing a lot of defense these days. There's a lot of bullets coming our way. And so what our school district decided to do was go on the offensive, and we actually have crafted legislation this year to try to put us in the driver's seat in some ways. As an example, there are some distinct advantages that charter schools have over traditional public schools. And I'll give you one example. If a charter school operator decided that they needed to hire an additional teacher, they could do that within one day. They could make the determination they need a teacher and hire that teacher. But in Williamson County, that process takes us 36 days. I go to the school board work session to make the proposal. Then it goes to the school board for a formal vote. Once it's been through that, then it goes to the County Commission Education Committee, the County Commission Budget Committee, and then ultimately the County Commission for approval. So I have 5 public meetings and a 36-day cycle to go through, even though we outperform practically every school system in the nation in Williamson County. And so to me and to our school board, that doesn't make sense. And as a result of that, we have crafted a bill. It's called the High Performing School District Flexibility Act. And what it would do is grant the Commissioner of Education the authority to waive state statute and policy in exchange for increased accountability, because the genesis of both the charter movement and the voucher movement was increasing flexibility locally in exchange for improved results or accountability. And if we're already outperforming these other entities and other methodologies, then why not afford us that same flexibility? So that's the argument that we're making. I will tell you, there's a lot of movement on the Hill. There's a lot of negotiations on the Hill. It's going to be an interesting legislative session, as it has been for the last couple of years. I don't know if you're familiar with the fact that there's a virtual school that's sponsored by the state. It's actually sponsored by a local school district in Union County, but supported through state policy and state rule. And Williamson County has about 100 students that participate in that program. So if you take 100 times 800 or 8,000, you're talking about $800,000 financial loss. Unfortunately, that school is one of the poorest performing schools in the state of Tennessee. And so I pointed out to say, I think that regardless of what type of charter or voucher system came in place, there would be parents, for whatever reason, that would choose to send their children there. Our reality is the school system has become somewhat of a revolving door for those families. So it's not going well at the charter school, or it's not going well at the virtual school, and so they come back, and invariably those kids fall further behind, and it costs us more dollars to remediate them, to get them caught back up. So it's an unfortunate cycle for the boys and girls.
Here, in Davidson County, we have several charter schools operating right now, and they have a lot of supporters in the community, a lot of parents that seem to be pleased with them, and those are charter schools that were approved by our local school board, and if the citizens of Davidson County don't think our board is doing a good job making those decisions, we can elect different people to the school board. I mean, we have a remedy for that. We have recourse. And so we can count on the fact that our board reflects what the community wants to do. And, when you talk about taking that decision away from those locally elected officials to a group of people, we don't get to pick who's on it. We don't get to change who's on it if we don't like what they're doing and don't like their decisions. That's just really minimizing citizen power and citizen input. It's just removing citizens from having a say in the schools that operate in their community. And so, whether you think charter schools are a great idea or whether you think they're terrible, what this bill does is diminish the power of the local citizen to have any influence in what's happening in their community. Most of them wouldn't even live in the area they're making decisions for. So you'll have people from Chattanooga and Knoxville deciding which charter school should come to Williamson County or not. How does that make sense?
It doesn't.